It begins with a betrayal, but not the kind you might expect. No knives, no lies, no loud confrontations. This one is quieter, more insidious. It happens in the still moments when you say yes, when you mean no, when you silence your needs to please someone else, when you trade your time, energy, or dignity for temporary approval. You don't hear a crack, but something breaks inside you, and it keeps breaking little by little until one day you wake up and barely recognize yourself. That's where this story begins. Somewhere in a suburb outside of Chicago, Thomas, 44, wakes up before dawn. Not because he's eager to greet the day, but because he can't sleep. The weight of his life, his obligations, the expectations he's bent under for decades, won't let him rest. He used to have dreams. But they've been traded in for obligations, debt, a marriage that's more polite than passionate, and children who barely look up from their phones. And yet the world calls this normal. But what if normal is the disease? What if the very structure of our daily lives, self-denial, emotional suppression, obedience to others, has created a crisis of self-betrayal so quiet we mistake it for maturity? Thomas once had fire in him. He studied philosophy in college. He admired thinkers like Nietzsche and Marcus Aurelius. He believed in ideals like truth, autonomy, courage. But ideals don't pay the mortgage. So he traded the fire for comfort. Now, all that's left are the ashes. This story is not just about Thomas. It's about all of us who have swallowed our voice, denied our strength, and chosen approval over authenticity. But there is a way back. There is a path. Not easy, not gentle, but powerful. It begins with an idea so sharp it feels dangerous in today's world. Love yourself more than anyone else, not in a narcissistic way, not in a way that dismisses others, but in a way that refuses to betray your values, your boundaries, your worth. That sounds selfish, doesn't it? But here's the question. Who suffers when you betray yourself? Who bleeds when you abandon your principles? Who grows weaker when you trade self-respect for shallow praise? No one. Only you. The world respects one thing: strength. And strength begins with self-loyalty, not kindness, not softness, power. Not over others, but over yourself. And the great thinkers have known this for centuries. Niccolo Machiavelli once wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But long before you think of that in a political sense, ask this. What if that fear must begin inside? The fear of betraying yourself, the fear of dying without ever living as who you truly are. Today, we begin building a new kind of power, not loud, not arrogant, but rooted in discipline, respect, and psychological clarity. If you're ready to start that journey, repeat these words, not to me, but to yourself. I belong to myself. Thomas wasn't always this way. There was a time not long ago when he felt something stirring deep in his chest, a quiet voice, faint but persistent. It didn't speak in full sentences. It didn't scream. It whispered. And what it said was simple. Enough. Enough of this pretending. Enough of the silent suffering. Enough of being everything for everyone else but nothing for yourself. The moment he heard that voice, he knew something had to change. But change isn't easy for a man who's been trained all his life to endure, to conform, to put others first. We are taught that to love ourselves means to indulge. Take a vacation, buy something nice, say affirmations in the mirror, but real love isn't indulgent, it's brutal. Real self-love is discipline, it is strategy, it is war against the parts of you that have accepted less than you deserve. Self-love is not comfort, it's command. When Machiavelli wrote about the nature of power, he praised the rulers who were hard, not just on others, but on themselves. The king who cannot command himself has no business commanding a kingdom. And so it goes for you. If you cannot rule your impulses, defend your values, guard your energy, then the world will do it for you. And the world, as you've probably noticed, isn't kind. You must understand this. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, every time you let someone overstep your boundaries, every time you seek approval over truth, you are betraying yourself. And betrayal always comes with a price. Sometimes that price is depression. Sometimes it's chronic fatigue. Sometimes it's a vague sense of emptiness that no achievement can cure, but the cost is always there. So what does it mean to truly love yourself more than anyone else? It means your time is sacred, your word is law, your focus is a weapon. It means you don't ask permission to exist, you take up space without apology. It means you don't trade your peace for politeness, your purpose for popularity, your values for validation. You become the guardian of your own life. And let's be clear, this is not about arrogance, it's about sovereignty. It's about rising each morning not with guilt or fear, but with clarity. To say to yourself and to the world, my loyalty is to myself first. Say that. Let it settle in your bones. Write it down. Repeat it. Because when you begin to live by that code, your life starts to change. Not immediately, not easily, but permanently. And that's when you begin to become untouchable. Most people spend their entire lives chasing love. Not love in its purest, highest form, but something closer to approval, applause, attention. They shapeshift to fit expectations. They bend their truth to avoid conflict. They lose sleep over whether someone likes them. But here's the uncomfortable reality. Love without respect is a trap. It feels good for a while, but it never lasts. And worse, it softens you, weakens you, dulls the sharp edge of who you really are. Thomas remembered a time when he confused being liked with being respected. At work, he took on extra projects to prove his worth. At home, he buried his anger beneath a smile. He was everyone's helper, everyone's rock. But inside, he was crumbling. And when the approval stopped coming, as it always does, he felt empty. That's when the realization hit him. Love without self-respect is worthless. This is a lesson as old as philosophy itself. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved, not because fear is better, but because it commands respect. Love without boundaries invites betrayal. If others see that you do not respect yourself, why would they? If you betray your own values to please others, you teach them to treat you the same way. So turn the blade inward. Ask yourself, what happens when you love yourself without respect? You indulge, you make excuses, you allow laziness to pose as self-care. You become soft. And in a world that rewards strength, softness without discipline is a liability. Loving yourself means fearing the cost of self-betrayal more than the pain of loneliness or rejection. It means saying, I respect myself too much to allow this. I fear betraying myself more than I fear losing you. And when you live from that place, not from neediness, not from desperation, but from grounded self-command, you become something rare, something unbreakable, something that cannot be manipulated by praise or destroyed by rejection. Because here's the truth. The man who commands himself is the only man who commands his future. He is not reactive. He is not dependent. He does not crumble when others walk away. Why? Because his foundation was never built on them. It was built on loyalty to himself. That is the edge of power. Cold, sharp, stoic. Reach it, and you'll never chase love again. You'll attract it. But whether it comes or not, you remain whole. That is freedom. That is fearlessness. Say this to yourself now. Respect myself. Fear betraying myself. Every man fantasizes about ruling something, his business, his destiny, maybe even the world. But the bitter truth is this. Most men can't even rule themselves. They wake up each day ruled by comfort, by distraction, by fear. And then they wonder why nothing changes, why their dreams stay distant, their goals unfinished, their strength untested. It's not a mystery, it's a lack of discipline. And discipline is the foundation of power. Thomas began to see this clearly the day he stood in front of his bathroom mirror at 5 a.m. The reflection looking back at him wasn't tired. It was soft. Not in body, but in mind. He had spent years chasing ease, snoozing alarms, delaying decisions, postponing pain. But ease is deceptive. It promises rest and delivers regret. The man who chooses comfort over command doesn't get peace. He gets mediocrity. Machiavelli studied the rulers of old, the kings, generals, and popes who shaped the world. He noted one simple truth. The ruler who cannot command himself will lose everything he gains. Power without self-control is a loaded gun in the hands of a child. But power built on discipline? That lasts. That creates legacy. Here's the daily war most men face. Two voices. One says, sleep in, take it easy, you've earned it. The other whispers, get up, move, build, earn your place. One leads to a life of excuses. The other leads to destiny. If you want to love yourself more than anyone else, you must choose the voice of command every single day. No exceptions, no compromises, no negotiations. To rule yourself is to treat your life like a kingdom. You are the prince, the general, the executioner. You reward discipline. You punish weakness. You hold yourself accountable with ruthless precision, not because you hate yourself, but because you love yourself too much to remain average. The world does not bend for the man who lacks control. If you cannot rule your thoughts, your habits, your appetites, then the world will rule them for you. And the world's discipline is always crueler than your own. Poverty, humiliation, regret. These are the consequences of self-abandonment. So choose differently. Choose discipline. Choose sovereignty. Look yourself in the mirror and say, I rule myself before I rule the world. Power is not measured by how much you move others. It's measured by how little others can move you. The most difficult war isn't fought in boardrooms or battlefields. It's fought in the silence of your own mind, against your own emotions. And unless you learn to rule them, you will always be someone else's pawn. Thomas had always thought of himself as emotionally intelligent. He listened, empathized, cared deeply. But caring too deeply without control is like carrying gasoline through a fire. One harsh word from his wife could ruin his week. A dismissive glance from his boss would spiral him into doubt. It wasn't until he read the writings of Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, that he realized the truth. Feelings are not commands. They're data, signals, but you decide what they mean. Think about it. Anger makes you reckless. Lust makes you impulsive. Envy makes you weak. Fear makes you obedient. These are not harmless emotions. They're weapons when in the wrong hands. And if your emotions control you, they're not just hurting you. They're exposing you, making you vulnerable, manipulatable, breakable. Machiavelli said a ruler must appear compassionate, honest, and loyal, but be ready to act coldly when necessary. That's not a license for cruelty. It's a demand for control. Your emotions are tools. Use them when needed, but never let them drive the car. The moment your feelings steer your actions, you surrender power. And those who understand that will use it against you. Imagine someone insults you. If you erupt, they win, not just in the moment, but in your mind. Now you're distracted, unsettled, off your path. That's not strength, that's submission. Real power is calm, measured, silent. The man who controls his emotions is terrifying, not because he's violent, but because he's impossible to provoke. So how do you build this? Through observation, through practice, through silence. Detach, breathe, watch, let the storm pass, and choose your response with precision. Don't react, respond, don't rage, calculate, don't collapse, stand firm. And when you can do that, truly do that, you become untouchable. Say it out loud. Say it like a creed. No one controls me because I control myself. Loyalty, we treat it like a virtue, a sacred bond, something eternal. But in the real world, where bills must be paid, where status is currency, and where self-interest drives decisions, loyalty is fragile. And if you place your foundation on it, you will be broken, again and again. Thomas had a best friend from college, Michael. They went through everything together, graduation, marriages, even the birth of their first children. But when a business opportunity arose, and Thomas needed a partner to back him, Michael vanished. Excuses, silence, distance. At first, it felt like betrayal, but over time, Thomas understood the truth. It wasn't personal. It was predictable. Loyalty is conditional. It's based on convenience, not commitment. Machiavelli warned of this. He wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle, and false. Harsh? Yes, but accurate. Most people are loyal only until it costs them something, until it threatens their status, their safety, or their comfort. Expecting eternal loyalty from others is like expecting the wind to stay still. And when you understand that, you stop being surprised by betrayal. You start preparing for it. The only loyalty that endures is the one you give yourself. Not in arrogance, but in necessity. Because when the crowd turns, when alliances break, when even those closest to you shift their priorities, you are all you have. And if you've abandoned yourself in the name of being liked or accepted, you'll have nothing left to stand on. This is not a call for isolation. It's a call for realism. Engage with others, love them, work with them, but never chain your worth to them. Never lean so heavily on someone that their departure shatters you. You must become your own foundation, strong, self-respecting, immovable. The paradox? When you no longer need anyone's loyalty, you often receive more of it. Why? Because people are drawn to strength, to independence, to the man who does not beg for attention, who does not crumble when abandoned. That kind of presence demands respect. So here is your new creed, one that protects you, one that frees you. Say it now, etch it into your bones. My loyalty is to myself first. Power isn't always loud, it doesn't always wear a suit, sit behind a desk, or carry a title. Real power is invisible. It moves through perception, silence, and psychology. It doesn't demand respect, it commands it. And the man who masters this form of power becomes impossible to control. Thomas began to notice something strange at work. The loudest voices weren't the ones with influence. The most confident weren't the most respected. It was the ones who spoke less, who moved with certainty, who didn't react emotionally. Those were the ones others deferred to. Power, he realized, wasn't about force. It was about leverage, and leverage begins in the mind. Machiavelli knew this. He saw how rulers manipulated perception, not with lies, but with strategy. They gave people what they craved: validation, safety, the illusion of control, while never surrendering their own power. Today, that battlefield isn't just in kingdoms. It's in boardrooms, social circles, even family dynamics. Wherever people exist, power games are being played. Most people are easy to predict. Why? Because they are ruled by impulse. They want to be liked, they need attention, they crave comfort. And because of this, they're easy to manipulate. But when you love yourself more than anyone else, when you no longer need approval, when your presence is scarce and your words are few, you flip the script. Scarcity creates value. Pull back. Make your time, your energy, your presence something people must earn. Don't over-explain. Don't overexpose. Mystery is leverage. Predictability is weakness. Let others wonder what you're thinking. Let them chase your approval. That's how you shift from pawn to player. Unpredictability is another weapon. A man who always responds the same way is easy to manage. But one who keeps calm, who shifts gears without warning, who moves with silent confidence, he becomes a variable others fear. Like the lion, calm and watchful, but capable of striking. That aura changes the dynamic in any room. So understand this. Power doesn't mean using others. It means refusing to be used. It means controlling the game by controlling yourself. Speak less than you know. Reveal less than you feel. And never let your need for connection cost you your self-respect. Say it out loud now. I control the game because I control myself. Every great empire, from Rome to the United States, has relied on one thing above all: a fortress. Not just of stone and steel, but of principles, of preparation, of resolve. Without it, power crumbles. Without it, even kings fall. And for the modern man, that fortress must be built in the mind. Thomas learned this lesson not from victory, but from collapse. A series of personal and professional setbacks left him feeling exposed, shaken. He had done everything the world told him to do, worked hard, been kind, stayed loyal. Yet here he was, on his knees. That's when he realized he had built everything except the one thing that could not be taken from him: a mind of steel, a fortress within. Machiavelli warned that rulers without fortifications invite attack, but he wasn't just talking about cities. He was talking about people. If you don't guard your peace, the world will pillage it. If you don't defend your values, others will trample them. Your mind must become the gate, the wall, and the soldier. This doesn't mean you shut yourself off from life. A fortress is not a prison. It's a choice. You allow what serves you. You reject what weakens you. You listen, but don't obey every opinion. You love, but don't depend on anyone to complete you. Your emotions knock, but they don't get to storm in. That is sovereignty. And how do you build it? With scars. Each betrayal, each failure, each moment of pain becomes a stone. Stack them, learn from them, harden because of them, not in bitterness, but in strength. The Stoics taught that pain is not the enemy. It is the path. The insult becomes proof of your restraint. The rejection becomes proof of your self-worth. The loss becomes proof of your resilience. And above all, the fortress must be silent. Power doesn't need to explain itself. It doesn't plead or perform. It simply stands, steady, cold, unshakable. That is what your mind must become, not reactive, not needy, untouchable. Say it now. Let it ring like iron in your chest. My mind is my fortress. I am unshakable. A fortress protects you, but a fortress alone doesn't win wars. It keeps you alive, but it won't take you forward. If you want to lead, to rise, to leave something behind that lasts beyond your name, you must master strategy. Cold, calculated, unflinching strategy. Thomas used to believe in hope. Hope that things would get better, that people would notice his effort, that success would just find him. But hope is not a plan. It's all it. And he began to see the damage that wishful thinking had done. Years passed, energy wasted, no clear direction. It was Machiavelli who finally broke the spell. Power is not given, it is taken. And taking requires precision. Life is not random, it's a chessboard. Every choice you make either strengthens your position or weakens it. Most people move like amateurs, short-sighted, reactive, emotional. They play for today, for comfort, for validation. But the man who plays the long game, he builds empires, he shapes legacies. Start with this: perception is power. You don't need to reveal everything. In fact, the less they know, the stronger your position. Appear strong even when you're uncertain. Appear calm even when you're calculating. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must appear virtuous, but act effectively. Translation: show what works for you and conceal what doesn't. Use every glance, every word, every silence strategically. But don't stop at perception. Build systems, build habits, build routines that strip chaos from your life. Get up early, eat with discipline, train your body, defend your focus. When others are exhausted from emotional drama, you move like a machine, not cold, just committed. And then there is legacy. Not fame, not applause, legacy. What will remain after you? Your children, your principles, your business, your writing? The man who lives only for today dies forgettable. The man who plays the long game becomes immortal in impact. So ask yourself, what habits today are building your legacy tomorrow? What alliances strengthen you? Which ones erode your edge? Say it now and mean it. I play the long game. My legacy begins now. So here we are, the summit. You've heard the principles. You've walked the cold corridors of discipline, detachment, sovereignty, and strategy. But the question still lingers like smoke in the air. How do you live it? How do you turn these truths into something more than words? You must become untouchable, not in the sense of arrogance, not in isolation or ego, but untouchable in your core, your mind, your values, your self-respect. The kind of man who walks into a room and changes it, not because he demands it, but because his presence speaks louder than noise ever could. Thomas is no longer a man reacting to life. He wakes early before the world stirs. He trains not just his body but his decisions. He moves with intent. He's not afraid to say no. He doesn't chase validation. He gives his word rarely and keeps it always. People notice. They lean in. They ask what changed. But he doesn't answer with lectures. He answers with silence, with action, with a life that now speaks for itself. Here's what becoming untouchable looks like in practice. First, loyalty to yourself. Every time you betray your boundaries, your values, your time, you weaken your foundation. Love yourself more than anyone else. Not to dismiss others, but to never dismiss yourself again. If you won't put yourself first, don't expect the world to. Second, discipline is proof. Words fade. Habits don't. Get up when it's hard. Speak when it's easier to stay silent. Walk away when your dignity is on the line. Discipline is the armor that protects your values. And every act of discipline is self-respect in motion. Third, emotional sovereignty. You feel, but you are not your feelings. You let anger rise, then let it pass. You feel fear, but walk forward anyway. You use emotions like tools, not chains. The man who cannot be emotionally manipulated cannot be defeated. Say this now, not as theory, as a vow. I am untouchable. My mind is my fortress. Let this be the day your second life begins, the life you build, not the one you inherited, the life defined not by others but authored by your own hand. To maintain power is to understand the rhythm of psychology, your own and that of others. The untouchable man is not just disciplined, he's strategic in silence. He studies the battlefield long before he steps onto it. He moves like a ghost, present but ungraspable. And this is what separates rulers from followers: cold psychological leverage. Thomas noticed how often he used to give himself away, explaining when silence would have been enough, defending himself when no defense was required, seeking understanding where it was never going to be offered. Every over-explained thought, every excessive apology was a leak in his fortress. Now, he simply observes, calculates, chooses. Power isn't about manipulation, it's about positioning. Most people walk through life begging to be seen, liked, praised, and because of that, they're easily controlled. You dangle approval, and they bend. You offer validation, and they follow. But the man who needs nothing, he becomes a mystery, a force, and forces don't chase, they attract. Control your frame, and you control the room. What's the frame? It's the mental filter you place on every interaction. If someone criticizes you, your frame determines whether it's a wound or an opportunity. If someone tries to provoke you, your frame decides whether you react or remain unmoved. The strongest frame always wins, and the strongest frame begins with this: I define me, no one else. Want more psychological leverage? Use scarcity. Be less available. Not to play games, but to train others that your time has value. Use unpredictability. Be consistent in discipline, but unpredictable in expression. Keep others guessing. Predictability invites control. Unpredictability commands respect. And here's the golden rule: never play a role to win favor. When you become the mask, you lose the man. Keep your identity sovereign. Let others wonder who you really are. They'll respect what they can't define. Say it now and say it slowly. I control perception because I control myself. I am no one's pawn. I am the player. Even a fortress must evolve. Because while walls protect, it is the inner command that ensures they hold. A man who builds a strong exterior but neglects the interior will still collapse. The mind is the last battlefield, and the one most easily ignored. Thomas began waking earlier, not for productivity hacks, but for stillness. A quiet hour before the noise of life could reach him. That's when he began constructing the final piece of his fortress, mental resilience, because life would not stop throwing storms. It would not stop testing him. But now, instead of bracing for chaos, he welcomed it as a sharpening stone. Resilience isn't about suppressing pain, it's about transforming it. When betrayal comes, let it strengthen your clarity. When rejection knocks, let it deepen your resolve. When failure finds you, let it sharpen your focus. You are not made of glass. You are not meant to break. You are meant to endure, to adapt, to rise. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, wrote that the obstacle becomes the way, not a detour, not a delay, the way. The insult becomes the test of your composure. The loss becomes the trigger for your discipline. The setback becomes the material for your rebirth. This is not philosophical poetry. This is war strategy. And silence, that too is a weapon. Stop defending yourself to people who don't matter. Stop arguing with critics who haven't built what you've built. The more you speak, the more you reveal. Let your life be the evidence. Let your results be the defense. Let your unshakable calm be the answer. When you build your mind into a fortress, you no longer flinch at rejection. You no longer panic under pressure. You don't crumble when someone walks away. You remain. You stand. You move forward. Not because the world is kind, but because you are strong. Say it now. Feel it settle into your spine. My mind is my fortress. I am unshakable. I do not collapse. I construct. I rise. Survival is not the final goal. Any man can survive. But to lead, to leave a mark, to build something larger than yourself, that requires strategy that cuts deeper than instinct. It requires legacy thinking. And legacy is not a matter of luck. It's a matter of design. Thomas used to think legacy was reserved for presidents, tycoons, and authors. But legacy isn't about scale. It's about impact. It's what echoes in the room after you leave, what your children remember when they face difficulty, what your name represents when it's spoken behind closed doors. It's your discipline turned into direction. Machiavelli believed rulers must think in generations, not moments. Every alliance, every public act, every decision was not about this week, but about the reputation that would outlive them. That's how you must begin to think. Every small choice you make, whether to scroll or to study, to speak or to remain silent, to act on impulse or on purpose, is casting a vote for the man you're becoming. Most people live in reaction. What happened today? What feels good now? But the untouchable man lives with vision. He asks, Will this habit feed the man I want to be? Will this relationship drain or deepen my strength? Will this shortcut cost me my integrity? He plays for the end game, and that strategy must be cold, not cruel, but clear. But build routines that make chaos irrelevant. Build values so strong you don't need to ask others what is right. Build systems that automate excellence. Let others burn out chasing popularity. You conserve your fire for impact. Because in the end, legacy is not applause. It is discipline turned into influence. A body of work, a trail of truth, a name that commands not because it was loud, but because it was consistent. When you live this way, people follow even after you're gone. That's how legends are built, not through noise, but through principle. Say it now, etch it deep. I live with strategy. I build my legacy daily. My name will echo because I lived with intent. By now, the path should be clear, not easy, but clear. You know what it takes, you know the rules, but knowing is not enough. You must now embody the laws, live them, breathe them, sharpen them daily until they become your natural instinct, not reaction, but creed. Untouchable is not just a word, it's a way of life. It's a declaration that no one holds the keys to your peace, your worth, your mind, but you. The man who becomes untouchable is not the one who avoids pain, but the one who walks through it, unmoved. Not because he doesn't feel it, but because he owns it. Let's revisit the laws you now carry. First, loyalty to self. You no longer beg for attention. You no longer chase approval. You do not betray yourself for cheap praise or temporary love. You put yourself first, not in selfishness, but in survival. Because you understand this truth. If you betray yourself, you give everyone else permission to do the same. Second, discipline as love. You no longer see routines as restriction. You see them as freedom. You wake up early. You train. You study. You build. You keep your word to yourself. Because every action is proof that you matter to you. And no one, not partner, not boss, not critic, can take that from you. Third, emotional detachment. You feel, but you are not controlled. Anger visits, but it does not drive. Fear whispers, but it does not command. You observe. You breathe. You move. Powerfully. Quietly, stoically, because the man who cannot be rattled cannot be ruled. Fourth, psychological leverage. You understand people, their patterns, their desires. You do not manipulate, but you do not submit. You engage when it serves your values. You detach when it threatens them. You reveal nothing unless it strengthens your position. You play chess while others play checkers. Say this now, not as performance, but as truth. I am the standard. I am the law. I walk with silence and strike with clarity. I'm becoming untouchable. So we reach the final threshold, not an ending, but a coronation. If you've come this far, you know the truth. The world cannot give you power. It cannot give you self-worth. It cannot give you peace. It can only test whether you've claimed them for yourself. And now, it's time to claim them fully. Thomas didn't become a different man overnight. He became a man who no longer betrayed himself. The change wasn't in his job, his status, or his surroundings. It was internal. He began saying no when he meant no. He stopped chasing love that cost him his dignity. He cut ties with what drained him. He replaced convenience with commitment. He built silence where there used to be noise. And the world responded, not with praise, but with respect. The same people who once overlooked him now watched him. The same circles that once excluded him began to seek his presence. Not because he sought their approval, but because he no longer needed it. He belonged to himself, and that made him magnetic. This is your choice now. Will you remain where it's safe, where people like you because you bend? Or will you rise into the discomfort of discipline, into the silence of strength, into the cold clarity of becoming untouchable? The untouchable man walks alone, not because he must, but because he chooses his path with precision. He keeps his circle small. He guards his time like gold. He gives love, but never surrenders his self-respect. He serves when it aligns with purpose. He walks away when it doesn't. He is not owned, not moved, not broken. So say it now. Say it and mean it. I am untouchable. My mind is my fortress. Let this be your final phrase, your commitment, your crown. And if this message stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and write your thoughts in the comments below. Tell the world where you stand. Tell them who you are becoming. because power means nothing without action. And the man who belongs to himself, he cannot be touched, he cannot be owned, he can only rise.